I'll just have everybody take their seat. I'm going to call the meeting of the Corporate Services Committee to order. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have no consent items. This is a special meeting. We have one scheduled item. The great thing about a special meeting is we're not allowed to have additional business or anything, so we'll be dealing with this one item, and then we'll be wrapping up and adjourning. The way that the meeting is going to move forward is the MPs have all decided that what we're going to do is collectively the mayor is going to give his presentation, but first we're just going to do just a 1-minute introduction from all of the MPs, just so they can introduce themselves and anything they'd like to say. It'll be pretty brief. The mayor will give his presentation, and we'll go right into discussion of issues. Around 1:25 or sooner, we will start with each of the members of parliament being able to take about up to a 5-minute, just wrap up thoughts on the discussion, anything they'd like to add at the end. And we will adjourn at 1:45 sharp, at which point there would be a photo op and media availability, because we'll adjourn right after that. So that's the way the meeting's going to proceed. And we'll start in it with item number 2. We will start, we're just going to go for the order. We'll start with Member of Parliament for Elgin London Middlesex, Karen Vecchio, who will give her introduction. We'll proceed across the panel. Let's go ahead.
So thank you very much for inviting me here today. I am proud to be representing the people of Elgin, Middlesex, London. And so the correlation, of course, with the City of London is I have a lot of the bedroom communities for the City of London employees, including the Dorchester and Thames Centre area. And I also represent the people along the corridor of the 401 that have those large businesses and a large piece of Lambeth. So although I'm out in the rural area, I have the rural ridings that include the rural piece of London. So Dingman Drive, Westminster, and areas of that sort. It is great to be here and wonderful to be here with my 3 colleagues. And I thank you very much for this opportunity, because I do believe, like you've said, we can do more things together. So it's great to be here together.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with members of council and with my colleagues. I'm Irene Matheson. I'm the MP for London Fanshawe. And in January, I'll come up to my 11th anniversary as the Member of Parliament. And it's been an incredible and particularly privileged opportunity for me to work with members of City Council, with my counterparts. I know that there are a lot of important issues, and these issues are very much close to my heart. First and foremost, affordable housing. And that fits in with the whole concern about affordability. I'm hearing from constituents who are desperately upset about the fact that they can't afford to put food on the table because their hydro bill is through the roof. And as the critic for veterans and previously the critic for seniors issues, I'm very concerned about affordability right across the spectrum, whether it's young families, single moms, veterans, or seniors. In the next 20 years, we are going to have 10 million seniors, and I don't want a single one of them to live below the poverty line. There's already 250,000 who live below the poverty line, and we can do better. Jack Layton said that the most important connection was between the federal government and the municipality, because the municipality is closest to the needs of people. And so I'm looking forward to the kind of synergy and things that we can do in that relationship together. So thank you for this invitation. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
There we go. Colleagues, thank you very much for inviting us here today. You know, it's not lost on me that a year ago, literally, I was campaigning, all of us were, talking about the need to reinvent and reinvest in this relationship, this very important relationship that exists among municipalities and those at the federal level. I think we're moving in the right direction now in Ottawa with this Prime Minister's vision, and I'm very proud at the local level we're seeing that happen. I've had the chance to chat with all of you over the past year. Many of you have come into my office. We've had one-on-one meetings. That invitation has been extended to ward councillors who are based in London North Centre, but certainly the invitation is open at any time for any councillor who wants to discuss issues. And looking at your strategic plan, I think that there are a few areas that stand out for me that that lend themselves to a dialogue. Poverty, affordable housing, emergency preparedness jumped out at me as well, because that's critical. And I think there is a federal role to play. I know that there is a committee in place that looks at issues of emergency preparedness, but I wonder if we could raise this in our dialogue, because I think a federal voice at the table is tremendously important. Beyond that, rapid transit, obviously. I'm passionate about rapid transit. This council is passionate about rapid transit, and we need to continue to work together to make that a reality in this city. Industry clusters around food processing, life sciences, manufacturing, and digital creative, in fact, lend themselves to many of the strategic goals, and I think the federal role can be quite helpful in moving those along in terms of jobs, growth, sustainability, and our city image. I note that in the strategic plan there is mention of innovation, and at the national level we are firmly committed to making sure that Canada is doing the sort of work, that research, that innovation that will position us globally, but really begins at the local level. And I think industry clusters of the type that are mentioned and identified in the report by you folks and by LEDC are quite important. Finally, electoral reform. We're speaking about that at the national level. I know that there are councillors here today who are passionate about that issue. We have an issue to deal with in this country, and that's voter apathy. Whether that apathy is in place because people are not interested in politics, or because the electoral reform does not have the built-in incentives that actually encourage people to go out and vote. Either way, we have a problem. We have a problem when 60% of folks are voting, typically at the federal level, and much less than that. Here, I think it's around 40%, 40 to 45% at the local level in London and beyond. It's been a problem for a long time, and I applaud you for raising the issue of electoral reform. I think there can be a dialogue around that here today and beyond. So thank you very much, councillors and mayor, for opening up the table. This is really an important part of the relationship. This meeting, I'm told, in fact, I know it used to take place on a regular basis. It went away for a while, but it's back, and I'm very happy about that. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Kate Young, Member of Parliament for London West and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport. I am so pleased that we were able to get together today. Certainly a nonpartisan type meeting like this is so important to the future of London. And I echo all of what my colleagues have said about some of the concerns that we have. We're happy with how we're moving forward. We've had some really good, very positive announcements in the last couple of weeks at Western and Fanshawe that I think is indicative of what this government feels about this area, that we are important to the federal government, and we want to make sure that our relationship is strong and that we're hearing from you about what you need from us. So that's what we're here today to do, is listen, continue that dialogue, and make sure that we're all on the same page, because as Peter said, it's historic, it's important for us to keep moving forward and keep talking. So I'll leave it at that, and interested to hear what we're going to hear in the next hour and a half. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those introductions. We'll now go to Mayor Matt Brown, who will make some remarks as well.
Thanks, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, colleagues. I hope we've all had a great Thanksgiving, and here we are back to work, and I think it's so appropriate that as we come back together, we're here with our federal partners. It's really amazing to see everyone in the same room with one collective goal, and that's to make London the best possible place to live, work, and play. So today we're here largely to talk about partnerships. We're here to talk about some of the things that you and your teams would be discussing, individuals. We all have singular responsibilities, but working together, we can do so much more for the collective good. And I want to just start with a few examples of some partnerships that we have in our community. Innovation Works is maybe a perfect example. It started as a good idea. The idea was to get London's best and brightest under one roof, to create an idea incubator, to create space where change will be made for the better. And it was a group of people from across all sectors that came together, and now we know that that space is happening. The Old East Village Grocer, Councillor Helmer, is another good example of a non-for-profit organizations, entrepreneurs, all under one roof. And they're offering up what their community needs most, a grocery store, in what was identified as a food desert just some short time ago. In turn, it also provides meaningful employment for those who would otherwise have a hard time finding that employment, and it's another good example. But on top of these really amazing social enterprises, we've also this year welcomed some world-class events to our city. If we think even just back to this past September, we've done a good job. And the reason why that's been happening is because we have an army of Londoners that come together as volunteers and make sure that we put our best foot forward. When the Country Music Awards came to our city, it was our single focus. And all I heard was compliments from the organizers. Of course, the air show returned after a 12-year hiatus, and that was pretty fantastic as well. What's next is we are really excited about the possibility of welcoming the World Juniors here to London in a partnership that we're forming with Windsor in December of 2013. So all of these events take place because of the cooperation between other levels of government, organizations, volunteers, and businesses. And I think the key here is that we're all Londoners. We're working together with other Londoners, and what these organizations share is that partnership. And as our MPs, you are our best ambassadors outside of this city. So for our cities to succeed locally and nationally and internationally, it's really important that we work together with all of you and form a very meaningful partnership. And I know that over the course of the past year, we've been doing that. We've been doing that with each and every one of you, because Londoners don't really see red or blue or orange. What they see is the bus arriving to pick up their kids on time for the first day of school. They see an ailing parent get the care they need in a safe, affordable home, and they see a paycheck after a hard day's work. And that's our responsibility, to work together to ensure that, that things are working. These kinds of partnerships do happen at all levels. And about a week ago, this past Friday, I joined a group of big city mayors in Toronto. John Tory was hosting a conference, a summit that focused specifically on affordable housing. And there are many times when our communities find themselves in competition. There are many times when our cities might be competing for jobs or for workers or for major events. But we know when we need to come together. We need to come together to discuss the challenges our communities are facing, the innovative ideas that will help us address them, and deliver a united call for a meaningful investment in affordable and social housing from all levels of government. And I know we've had these conversations before, and I know we're going to continue to have them, but we've set that as a key priority. The issues that we're facing in London are very similar to those across Canada. We have over 2,500 individuals and families waiting for just one type of affordable housing. The wait time can be anywhere between 1 and 2 years, and it's far too long. Of course, we have a strategic plan. We want to build a sustainable city. We want to work together to grow our economy. We want to strengthen our community, and we want to lead in public service. And those are all clearly articulated in that strategic plan that this council approved within the first 100 days of taking office, the strategic plan that drives all of the work that we do, that's linked directly with our multi-year budget to ensure that we have the resources required to ensure that we can invest in the initiatives that we've identified as our priority. And that's been shared with you. But where I want to finish is on rapid transit, and I thank you for bringing that up earlier. This is the single largest project that we have ever contemplated as a community, and it is well over $500 million. It will fundamentally change the way that we move across the community. It will change the way that we grow as a community. It's the foundation for the London Plan. And this is not something that we can do on our own. We're willing to direct significant dollars, almost $130 million towards this project, but we need to partner with our federal partners and, of course, our provincial partners. We'll have a report that's just going through council this evening that talks about a number of the initiatives, about 25 different initiatives that are connected to rapid transit through that Phase 1 funding. And I'd love for us to be able to have an opportunity to talk about that. And then maybe the last area that I want to focus on is our booming tech sector. And this is maybe one of our best-kept secrets that's not going to be a secret for very much longer. We have 10,000 jobs in this sector, a sector that hardly existed at all a decade ago, and it's our 5th largest employer in terms of industry and organizations here in London. What's really interesting is that we have, banking and insurance. That's our 4th largest employer. And I don't think it's going to be long before we see the tech sector boom and surpass it. 10,000 jobs, 300 companies, 1,000 new jobs in the past 18 months have been added, and what I'm told are anywhere between 500 and 1,000 job openings. And so again, another key area of focus for all of us here. So I'll wrap up by saying welcome again. Thank you for being here. We're certainly looking forward to these discussions, looking forward to finding ways that we can partner in a meaningful way and ensuring that this isn't just a snapshot in time. And I certainly don't think that it's going to be. I think that this is one more opportunity for us to get together, identify some priorities, and then stay focused on working together to build a better city, because we know that strong cities make a strong country. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. So just as chair, I'm just going to outline how we'll proceed next. We have just under an hour to proceed through questions and comments from councillor colleagues. I know that some of you will want to comment on some of the things, some of the issues. Some of you will want to ask questions of the MPs. For help for me, if you could just clarify whether you're looking for a response, that would be helpful. Sometimes we make a comment and I'm not really sure if you want me to go to the panel or not. I will just mention a comment to start us off, and then I will look to build a speakers list from colleagues. I think something significant in the intros that I noticed, and that was not one of our colleagues who are here today mentioned their party in their intro. And I think that's important because we all have common constituents here in London. We all represent both the guests today as well as the members of this council, very diverse political views, but we have London and the best interests of London at heart. And I think it was great to hear at the start that we're not talking about parties today. Obviously, government and opposition play very important roles in government, and council will engage with those groups in different ways. But it's nice to be here today to talk about how we can move London forward collectively as a group, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. So with that, I'll start a speakers list of colleagues, and we can move right into that discussion. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think one of the most positive, I'll ask for a response to my comment and question, actually. One of the most positive things that I've seen with this government is a serious commitment to ending poverty throughout the nation. And that's really been articulated quite well through the poverty reduction strategy. And at the City of London, we're exceptionally fortunate to have brilliant staff who have lended their expertise to the policy decision makers in both the federal and provincial government. So I wonder how that we could assist you in leveraging the expertise that we have in-house in formulating this policy.
Whoever wants to jump in can just go ahead.
I agree. The quality of your staff is really remarkable. We've engaged in meetings with you folks, and also city staff have sat in on those meetings. And when the issue of poverty comes up, there is a specialist knowledge in poverty, because inevitably we will talk about things like affordable housing. And when we look at housing strategies at the national level, we have to have very good local insight. And so we have that here. And I've been able to build something of a rapport and relationship with folks like Sandra and Steve, who are remarkable advocates for housing. You know that already, but I want to simply make it clear that I feel the same way. And I look forward to that continuing. So that dialogue, that relationship is in motion. But if Councillor Park, if there are ways that you think that can be furthered along with any advice or any points that you'd like to pass along, of course, my ears are wide open.
I have MP Vecchio who wants to respond as well.
You have to turn yours off.
Perfect. Part of my portfolio is being the critic for families, children, and social development. So one of my things that I do is, although I'm in opposition, I believe that opposition is a place that you can critique things, and using critiquing as a positive thing. It doesn't have to say everything is bad, but it's saying that there are some positive things here as well. So part of my role was, I was down in Toronto looking at the unaffordable housing, so looking at the rising cost of housing, which has a very strong impact on what happens to the affordable housing, the allotment there. And one of the big things that I heard through my roundtables in Vancouver and Toronto had a lot to do with the red tape, whether it was at financial institutions on how much people could lend out. But, you know, at the end of the day, everybody seemed to have, everyone had wanted to help out and make sure that we had this affordable housing. But a lot of times it might have been a $500,000 investment that was needed to get some of the groundwork done. So I think the most important thing is that when we're making decisions, whether it's affordable housing or whether it's any of these other programs, we need to look at those stakeholders that are outside of government that are not only impacted, but can have a very quick answer to why is this not working? Why do we not have the affordable housing going? Because there needs to be more than just government. The private partnerships have to be there as well. And so it's really important that we're listening to them as well. So I had a lot of people talk about you know, they want to build. And in Toronto, the biggest issue there is that everything's going up. And if you want affordable housing for your family, you're going to be going off to Durham and outside of those regions now. And those are concerns that we have because it is going to have an impact on the City of London. We've seen the housing rate has gone up 12%, is it? Is that what there's been a huge increase with L-Star when they gave me their information about a month and a half ago. They've seen an increase in rising cost of housing here as well. So we have to look, what's happening in Toronto is happening in small sections of London as well. So we have to make sure that we can encounter that. But most of the important thing is making sure that everybody's on board, including the private enterprise.
MP Young.
Yes, thank you. I'm so glad that you brought up this very big issue that doesn't seem to ever go away, and ending poverty is something that I know the City of London and Lynn Livingston has worked hard on in a number of different ways, inviting the community to find ways to alleviate the problem, but it doesn't seem to be going away. And I was thinking about, we have pre-budget consultations that are coming up, and I wanted to talk about poverty specifically and see if there's anything that we could discuss as far as our budget deliberations are concerned and how we can add to that. And so I think there's time for us to get together and specifically talk about poverty in this city and how we can address the issues in our pre-budget consultations. We don't have a monopoly on good ideas, and I think that's something that you'll see about the government, that we're open to new ideas no matter where they come from. So we're really listening.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you for your question, Tanya. Very important. And this is something that I've devoted a lot of time to. And very clearly, it's time for all governments to look at this seriously and take action. We've had a great deal of discussion. And one of the things that we think will move things along is legislation. And to that effect, I started a piece of legislation that I borrowed from a colleague of mine who is now retired. And fortunately, it's been taken up by another of my colleagues and introduced in February of this year. And it's very, very specific. It's about strengthening Canada's social safety net and looking at the things that undermine families and individuals in terms of poverty. It's already been mentioned in terms of affordable housing, affordability in general, but I'd like to add childcare to that list, because without access to safe, affordable, and reliable childcare, it's very, very difficult for a family to get started. And it also puts a great deal of pressure on other parts of the family. And I'm thinking of seniors who end up in a situation where they're providing childcare, and it's very, very difficult for them. We want this initiative to include federal ministers in dialogue with the municipalities, because as we said, I think a number of times, it is the municipality that has a sense of what's going on in terms of the local community. And we also need to have, and this legislation outlines it, what we would call a monitoring of policies and programs. Very often, provincial, federal, governments, they make policy without consideration of the impact that that policy has in terms of the larger community. The decision to privatize hydro is just one of those policies. This bill also looks at the impact of precarious employment on families and prolonged illness and disability. About a week and a half ago, I attended a forum here in London at King's College about persons living with disabilities and the real barriers they face. And of course, access to jobs and housing and healthcare is just a small slice of those barriers. So looking at our communities, the bill also asks that there be a role for the National Council on Poverty Elimination, and again, coordinating with the relevant ministers of the Crown to make things happen, and a poverty reduction commissioner, because this is a huge issue. It's something that is right across the country. It doesn't matter whether it's London, Ontario, or a First Nations community on James Bay. Poverty is something that costs our economy, and this is crass, but they reckon costs our economy $30 billion a year. And it is the kind of financial cost that slows down or impedes us addressing the social and the familial costs. So I think something very hard-hitting in terms of, here is a framework, let's get at it, and let's do it together.
Thank you. I have on the speakers list, Councillor Usher, Hopkins, and Cassidy, just so colleagues know that I've caught you. If I haven't, then let me know. Go ahead, Councillor Usher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to all of you. My ward is shared with some of you, both Irene and Karen, but the others of you, we all serve London. I feel like every decision I make around this horseshoe, every talk I make, I talk about London in general, not just my ward. If my ward benefits, that's great. I'm only here because my ward sent me here to represent the decisions that we make for London. So I just want to make sure that that's understood. I believe strongly in you build better cities, you build a better nation. And that's our criteria. If you want a better Canada, I think that we need to build the better cities. And I think that that's the very, very basic. And I think that the federal government over the years have made some really good commitments to cities. And I want to really thank you for that, because I don't want you to go away thinking that we're just begging. We're also giving thanks for all the past and the future. There are some commitments that are made in the future via the phase 1 and phase 2 commitment to funding. And I'm not going into the details of that, but you may know what those are. I know some of them. But I firmly believe that we work with the federal government to implement a partnership, and that's, to me, this is the partnership. This is where the partnership is. If you want to call it, this is where the rubber hits the road, because you're going back to Parliament Hill and you're going to deliver some of the messages that you hear here. But that's where the strength comes in. I don't need to tell you that you've mentioned it already, but I want to mention it again, that much of our focus, we've got lots and lots of requirements to build the city, but much of our focus over the past few years during the election and since then has been on transit, on infrastructure, and on housing. And these are things that we have cried about in the wilderness for many, many years, and we never seem to be able to solve them completely. They will always be there. We will always need help, but we always need to ensure that we build sustainable infrastructure, better transit system, and more housing for our people. and that's what it all translates into. So from my perspective, sitting here as a city councilor, I just want to deliver a message that nobody else will deliver. I sit on the standing committees of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and we make a lot of decisions, and a lot of those decisions go back to your government. And we have a seat at your table at times. When I say we, I mean FCM on behalf of us, have a seat at the table, and they speak for us. And that's where that force or that commitment of infrastructure, transit, housing, and a lot of other things will always come into play. So I want you to always remember that when you hear those, you've got to relate it back to us in London and us in our community, our entire region, because we're all suffering from this. We know a little bit more now about the phase 1 funding. We're beginning to understand a little bit, at least at a high level, about the phase 2 funding. We don't know all the details yet, but that will come in the future. So my one plea to you, personally, is that in a few months, you would be asked to meet members of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in your office in Ottawa to talk about these subjects in a little bit more detail. I ask you to take up that challenge. I'll be one of those people who will be coming to your office. Just want you to know that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, appreciate the comments. I have MP Vecchio who wants to respond.
This is just a really short response, but I'm really proud because the four of us are actually working together when it comes to the London Abused Women's Centre, and you'll be hearing a media release on Friday. But it's the four of us that are doing things, and I think the one thing that's really important is I do sit with 3 other members here that represent the City of London, and I do not see, when it comes to our regional issues, there being very much of a partisan nature. I was so happy when Kate came down and fixed an issue as the parliamentary secretary. She took it home and got it done, because not only was she the parliamentary secretary, but she was also the neighboring riding. And so it's really important that when we're doing work that we, in London especially, Ottawa is a different place, and I recognize that. When we're in London, our job is to make sure that we are working together, and that's what you'll hear from us, because I'm sure if any of you bring something forward, the four of us will work together. If it's a great idea, I can't say all the time, it's got to be a good idea, and I'm sure the four of us together will continue to work together, especially when it comes to the benefit of our region.
MP Frederick-Skatos.
Thanks very much, Chair. Whenever you're in Ottawa, whether it's FCM or whatever you know, when I have a coffee or whatever it is, Harold, I'm glad to meet. So by all means, I look forward to that. I have tremendous respect for what FCM does. They are a real partner in all of this. It's important to say that, because we have seen in the past that FCM has not been respected. Their perspective has not been respected. I should be specific. I really believe that's changed now with the Prime Minister's vision, and you were there, I assume, when the Prime Minister addressed FCM, and you have a Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, and Minister Sohi, excuse me, who is intent on working with organizations such as FCM in a respectful way, and ensuring that dialogue moves forward so that all Canadians benefit. You mentioned phase 2. We are still in the process of working out what phase 2 will look like in terms of a funding formula that will be in place, and all of those factors are coming together. We've consulted here in London on that, but still very open to engaging in that dialogue. Consulting is absolutely essential to what we do. Now, granted, some of you are probably thinking, and I'll say it, well, we can't just consult, we have to see concrete results, and I believe we will. Phase 2 is where the bulk of the money is, but we have to be very careful as to how we carry out the decisions around phase 2, because, as I say, the bulk of the money is there, and hence the bulk of the responsibility, perhaps, if I can put it in those terms, is there. I look forward to the dialogue that you folks are going to be engaging in as far as phase 1 asks. And there are provisions around that, 50% eligibility, and there is a timeline constraint, but I think London can get that work done. And if there's any further comments on that part of the on that issue, then I'm glad to engage, but I support everything that's happening in this city. Really, we have turned an important corner. I note the mayor's comments on tech. That's very, very promising, and it is really helping to transform our image. Waterloo can talk all it likes, quite frankly, about the innovation that's happening there, and great things are happening in Waterloo. Bardish Chagger's a good friend of mine, and she trumpets Waterloo all the time. Well, Kate and I will trumpet, and frankly, Irene and Karen will echo this message. They're champions for London too. We need to really get behind an innovation agenda in Canada. We're doing that here in London, and I think you're seeing the federal government respond to that in kind with some of the announcements, and Kate alluded to this before. Some of the announcements we've made recently, $66 million to fund brain disorder research, $45 million investment to help build state-of-the-art facilities that will move along brain research and engineering at Western. And finally, biotech. Mary, you were there last week, obviously, with Fanshaw's announcement, and that will continue. It's very important that we continue to pursue this, and why can't London be an innovation leader, not just a player, but a leader? So all of that is at play here, but, and maybe I've been rude. So Harold, anytime you're in Ottawa, by all means, but anytime you folks are in Ottawa, okay, for a coffee or whatever you like, get in touch. My door is always open as your MP. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I have MP Matheson, but first I just want to let our MP colleagues know that Phase 1 funding has been mentioned. In about maybe 4.5 hours from now, we'll be debating and approving our Phase 1 ask. So I think we'll have lots to discuss. Lots to discuss. You're welcome to stick around and watch it if you like to. MP Matheson.
Well, thank you very much, Harold, and you have been in my office in Ottawa many, many times. Peter's offering coffee. Clearly, I'm going to have to up the ante. I'd like to say that FCM and the work that you do through the various councillors, people like the councillors of the City of London, has always provided really clear, well-researched documentation and support and rationale for all of the campaigns that FCM has conducted over the years. And I know that housing, infrastructure, and transportation are key. And I understand that absolutely. Because despite my youthful appearance, I've been kicking around here for a very, very long time. So I want to let you know that I absolutely support these key pieces in terms of building London, making it the best it can be. Housing, of course, because despite the fact that we don't acknowledge it, London has the same problem with homelessness and inadequate housing per capita as they do in the city of Toronto. And we tend to look at the big smoke and think, oh, terrible problems there. But we too have an issue with inadequate housing, and the impact that it has on families is debilitating. I know that. I was a kid who was underhoused, desperately underhoused, and the impact on my family and the way I looked at the world was profound. And so housing is a very important part of building a livable city where people have a sense of their value and equity of opportunity. Of course, infrastructure, because I do recall that there are parts of this city where the antiquated infrastructure is impeding development, impeding the attraction to businesses, and it's very, very expensive to have outdated infrastructure. So very important. And transit keeps coming up. And I have to tell you that I have a special interest in that too, in as much as my riding has very often been disadvantaged by the fact that we didn't have buses who could get people to work in that very eastern part of the riding, shift workers, and of course students. Fanshawe College is a big part of my community, and I want to make sure that they have access to the very best transit, but not just in the City of London. And that's not undermining in any way the value of effective, efficient, affordable transit within the city. But I think that we can do even better in terms of our regional outlook. And I've been working with groups and looking at the importance of connecting our small towns to our larger cities through regional transportation and ultimately making Via Rail more effective and efficient so that a Londoner wanting to do business in Toronto is not impeded by a schedule. So there are large things to look at in terms of transit. All of them are exciting because they're environmentally sensible, they're economically proven, and they build communities. So I want to thank you, and I certainly want to say thanks to FCM for the years and years of really well-documented research that they've been generous enough to bring to Ottawa and share.
Great, thank you. I have speakers on the list, Councillor Hopkins, Cassidy, Van Holst, and Helmer. So we're going to be touring around this side of the room a little bit. We have about a half an hour left in the discussion, so if colleagues want to keep their points and questions concise, we can get to as many of them as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. I don't sit on corporate services, so thank you for allowing me to ask a question, and thank you for being here. It's so great to see the four of you here at our chambers. Really appreciate it. MP Fragiskatis mentioned electrical reform. It's an important topic for a lot of us here, in particular our chair. And here at Corporate Services, we have been playing around with ranked balloting, and it's working quite well, I think, and with some tweaks here and there. But Peter, you mentioned the concern around increasing voter turnout. I've been around a long time, and it's always a concern. So I have a question. If you could sort of give us an update as to where the government is on electrical reform and how you see some of these changes increasing voter turnout.
Go ahead.
Glad to. This is an issue I'm especially passionate about. It speaks to democracy, and that's why we're all here, ultimately. As far as where the Government of Canada is on the question at present, there is a committee, an all-party committee that has been established. It is traveling the country as a way to gather the views of Canadians on electoral reform and what they think about their electoral system. Either the, and not just the system. Obviously, first past the post carries inherent problems, and many think that it's responsible for a declining voter turnout. And so we're examining alternatives. The committee, I should say, is examining alternatives by speaking to Canadians and academics and other advocates. The preferential ballot is one alternative. Proportional representation is another alternative, and there are a few others too. As part of that, though, they're also looking at issues such as mandatory voting and online voting. Canadians have raised this in recent years, and so I think it deserves to be part of the dialogue. The committee will be reporting back to the House of Commons its final report on December 1st. And from there, the Government of Canada will be examining that report, and we will move forward from there and on that basis. I think it's critical that we engage in this because, as I said, we have declining voter turnout in this country. 2015 was a bit of a, I mean, it was an anomaly because we had 68% turnout, but in 2008 we had 58%. In 2011 we had 60%. Those are the two worst voter turnouts in federal history on record. And as I said before, and as all of you are aware, at the municipal level, you're averaging between 40 and 45%. If people aren't voting, what's wrong with the system? Where's the canary in the coal mine, so to speak? And we've sent in the canary, if you want to follow the analogy. This committee is very serious about the work that it's doing. We want to hear from Canadians. But if I can ask you a question, and perhaps we're out of time, but offline, I'd love to get your thoughts on the preferential ballot, because you mentioned that you've been working with it. And so I want to, and judging from the tone of your remarks, you've had some positive experiences. And so I would like to have a conversation with you, or with any counselor for that matter, who's interested in a dialogue around the issue. Thank you very much.
And I think that's probably an appropriate place is to offline, just so we,
Sure.
seems like a good individual conversation, since
Absolutely.
counselors may have diverse opinions on that
Yes.
as well. MP Young.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that it was just a couple of weeks ago, we had a nonpartisan electoral reform town hall meeting, and the four of us were there. And it was something like 300 people came to King's College, and it was a really good opportunity for Londoners to voice their concerns, their questions, and find out what they're thinking of. So I think that shows you the way that we're working together, and electoral reform is just one of the areas. So we'll be able to give you the results of that town hall discussion, and you'll be able to see what people are thinking about. Thank you.
Great, thank you. MP Matheson.
Well, thank you, Councillor Hopkins, for the question, the opportunity to talk about electoral reform. And it is extremely important in regard to engaging people, making them feel that they are truly represented and have a voice. I think the discussion around voter turnout in decline has a great deal to do with people feeling marginalized, not feeling that what happens to them or their views matter. And that is a very serious thing in a democracy. One of the things I guess I should put up front is that for over 30 years, New Democrats have had, and I'm sorry, I'm getting into party stuff here, have had a policy of proportional representation, and have done a great deal of research on that. I myself was on a committee some 25 years ago that toured the province and asked the questions. So I'm very excited to see this federal committee. I think it's very, very important. I know that they have had a remarkable response. Nathan Cullen was on CBC just yesterday talking about this incredible response from Canadians. They are engaged. They want to be part of changes that will make for a better democracy. And just in regard to, I guess, my little corner of the world, I sent out a mail out about, I don't know, a month or so ago, and I'm starting to get the mail back in. And overwhelmingly, people are talking about the importance of representative parliaments. I have the odd curmudgeon who says first past the post is the only system that I will support, but they are very much in the minority. I bet out of 125 responses, I had 4 curmudgeons. So it's definitely something that people are engaged with, and I think that speaks volumes. So I'm excited about the report that we hear in early December, and let's get on with it. Let's make that important step so that people do feel that they are represented, and that what they think, feel, how they live, and their experience of this country matters.
And MP Vecchia wanted to weigh in on this as well.
I'm thinking those curmudgeons are from Elgin, Middlesex, London. Because in our results, we've received about 500 back on things, and first past the post has been at 75% or more in response. So it depends on how we're aiming. I think at the end of the day, we need to be listening, but it's not just so much about the way we vote, but it's the way that the people react after the elected. And that goes for all sitting officials, whether you're a member of parliament, whether you're a councillor, it doesn't matter who you are. But I think the thing is we need to keep our word to the electorate. And the most important thing is that when we're there, that yes, I don't want to get into anything, but the biggest thing is we need to make sure that we just don't fall under our party lines. That when we're working in the federal government, a lot of times people work in a bubble and they don't know what's happening in their own riding. I think it's really, really important that the people that are elected remind themselves each and every day that they're coming from their riding, they were elected by their constituents, and that's the way it needs to be done. So I think we need to make sure that the elected officials start behaving properly as well, and making sure that they don't get swallowed up by Ottawa, because that's a very possible thing.
Great, thank you. I have Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to add my thanks to my colleagues. Thank you to all the MPs for coming here today. I also want to thank, and I'm going to circle back to something, just the way this works. You have to wait your turn in line. So I'm circling back to something that Councillor Park brought up, and thank you through the chair to Councillor Park for bringing it up. I want to talk about poverty reduction, and it's a timely topic, and especially right now because just a few days ago, the Honourable Minister Duclos released a discussion paper towards a poverty reduction strategy. And I know that the provincial government has had a poverty reduction strategy as well in place for a few years. And we're lucky to have MPP Matthews, who was heading that up, and she's another local cheerleader for London, so that's great. And it's good to hear MP Vecchio talk about everybody working together for the good of London, because this is exactly the kind of issue that you need to be working together, and we all need to be working together, and we can't let partisanship or anything like that get in the way. This council at the end of March supported unanimously a report that came out through the community. It was a grassroots initiative. It was community-driven, and the report was London for All, a report to end poverty, or a roadmap to end poverty. And I had the pleasure of speaking with Irene Matheson and with Kate Young one-on-one about the report. Got a lot of very positive feedback. So what led to a lot of the recommendations that came out in the report was about identifying the gaps and trying to eliminate this silo approach that's been going on for generations, not just municipally, not just at the municipal level, but at the provincial and the federal level as well. And part of that is this silo, the silo approach of individual organizations working on their own and doing the best they can, but spinning wheels in the end because they're fixing individual problems and not the entire issue altogether. So this is where we have another possibility for gaps to occur is if we have the different levels of government all working independently. So what we have to do is come together and develop a poverty reduction strategy that involves all levels of government and involves the community members that have already come forward here in London and are willing to do the work that it takes. They're willing to break down the silos. They're willing to give up their own little turfs if it means making a meaningful difference. So again, I know it mentions in the poverty reduction strategy that a coordinated approach is necessary. So it makes me feel really good to hear all four MPs talk about that, talk about working together. And again, you mentioned our staff. We have great staff working with us to develop this report. And people are wondering, I know, in the community, questions have been coming up, what's happening now? There were 114 recommendations. I think 27 were to happen within the first 12 months. Most of them are already underway. Most of them were underway before the report was even finalized. So if people are wondering, and if these four wonderful representatives of London are wondering what's happening, there's a community update taking place at the Goodwill Building on October 13th. So we'll have city staff there, we'll have community organizations there to talk about where we are right now with the implementation of the recommendations in this report. One of the big things coming out, one of the things that this council endorsed and recommended was that there be an implementation body, and that for the time being, city staff lead in putting together that implementation body. Through you, Mr. Chair, I invite all four of you to be involved in that. We need your leadership on that implementation body. So if you can't be there personally, send somebody. Suggest somebody, recommend somebody, tap somebody on the shoulder, because this is a community problem and it will only be solved if the entire community is on board. And you wonderful people are part of the community as we are, but it's more than all of us too. It's everybody working together. So thank you.
Have MP Young.
That's a fantastic idea. I really like that, and I think it just speaks to what we're doing today. Let's keep the conversation going. How can we lend our support to make sure that the people in Ottawa know what London needs? So the Goodwill meeting on the 13th, it may already be in my calendar, but what time is it? Well, anyway, I want to make sure that if I can, I'll be there to hear the latest. So thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. I know you've been an advocate on this for a number of years, and especially with the report specifically. You did great work along with the rest of your colleagues. I agree. The danger of the silo effect is in place, and not just with this policy, with any policy. And unless there's a dialogue, we won't advance the agenda in any meaningful way. At the federal level, we are very proud that the Canada Child Benefit has been put in place. I really believe, and this is not a partisan comment, that this is the most transformative social policy since healthcare. It will lift more than 300,000 children out of poverty, and that includes children in London. The 9,000 children we believe will be lifted out of poverty because of this. Minister Duclos is a former academic. I'm a former academic, and perhaps because of that, we've become friendly. He's so passionate on these issues. I've had the chance to get to know him over the past year or so, and I really believe in what he's trying to do with this policy, because I'm going to see, and we are all going to see, the effects on the ground. We already are, but this is, it's very encouraging. As far as the panel that was set up in the report, I hope you received my letter of support. I did express some concern around the living wage and if that was imposed. Not to say that the report tended in that direction, but sometimes there's a tendency to want to rush for good reason, that we all want to see poverty dealt with. But I think imposing a living wage policy might do more harm than good. But other than that, I thought the report was absolutely outstanding. Beyond that, at the federal level, we need to continue to encourage industry clusters, such as those that are being pursued here in London. Digital creative helps to create jobs. Manufacturing, and whether that's traditional manufacturing, which I don't think we should not give up on that yet. No, we should not give up on that. I think those who have come out and said that traditional manufacturing is something of the past and we have no future, I think that is misguided. Advanced manufacturing has a real future, though. I especially look at the example of Pittsburgh, which many councillors know very well. Pittsburgh is now a center for robotics and healthcare, and we can do the same in London. We have a wonderful reputation around healthcare. We need to continue to encourage that. LEDC is talking about, investing in the life sciences. That's very important, but why not also advanced manufacturing, whether it's robotics or things in that realm. And at the federal level, we're intent on an innovation agenda that lines up very well with what the LEDC is talking about. All of that is germane to the discussion here because you're talking about jobs, you're talking about growth, and where we have a national vision that applies to the local, then I think we're on a very good basis. Finally, newcomers. I want to applaud this council for getting behind the idea that refugees matter and can be full and equal members of our community here in London. I think London has really set an example. We have worked together on this. All levels of government have, and that will continue into the future. We know, because of the data, that newcomers are particularly susceptible when it comes to poverty. And we need to continue to monitor that. We need to continue to work together between ourselves, all levels of government, and also the partners on the ground, so the nonprofits that are out there doing great work, and the settlement agencies. And so there's a lot of room for dialogue here, robust and very serious dialogue, Councillor Cassidy. So thank you for the important question.
I have MP Vecchio and then MP Matheson.
Yeah, good to go. So when it comes to the poverty strategy, right now, Minister Duclos, the day that he tabled that document, it was in the HUMA meeting that I attended, and we went through that document. I think that's a really good playing ground to where we start off with, and I too have a great respect for the minister. He is one minister who I know he knows his stuff inside out, and so I have a great respect for Minister Duclos. When it comes to the Poverty Committee, Irene also led you to the C245, which is a poverty reduction, and Commissioner added in there too. As a federal government, it's really important that we work together. But I think also what we've seen is like the provinces come off and they have, and I know I met with Mayor Brown and Minister Duclos regarding it, but trying to do the basic annual income. Now, the only thing I have, and I do believe that sometimes that can work. There's different ways of making it work, and whether you're looking at it through the Revenue Canada Agency, whether you're looking at it as programs or whatever it may be, it's really important that we see that it's not stackable. Because I think that's one of the biggest concerns I have right now, is I've seen a number of people will say with this provincial program that's going out there, it's going to be stacked. So what's going to happen is we're going to be paying people, and then they're also going to possibly get their old age security and other guaranteed income supplement benefits. And what happens is, that's not a real look at what poverty is, because they're getting things from other sources. It's not coming from one avenue. Also, with the child benefit that I've seen, some of the concerns that I have, and this is where I have to put on my critic's role and say, what works about it and what doesn't work about it. So one of the concerns that I had was the Cooperative Federation for Cooperative Housing from Canada came to meet with me, because some of the concerns we have is when we look at housing, and I see, oh, she's not here anymore, but I saw she was here before. One of the things that we need to look at it as housing is some of these benefits are not going to come into calculations when we're looking at a housing benefit. So what we're going to potentially see, and one of my concerns is that you're going to have a family. Now, because I'm a geek, I did 83 tax returns to look at the benefits for child benefit and comparing it to what people receive with the child tax benefit and the UCCB compared to what they receive now. Yes, more money is in the pockets now, so that's a positive. But at the same time, what I'm seeing is when we're calculating things for other benefits through our social programs provincially, they're not taking into account some families that are receiving $60,000 to $70,000 through the child benefit. And so that stuff's not being accounted for, yet they're going to be given a house, or they're going to be given things like that. I think it's really important that we do look at everything as in, what is the family coming into? Because I always put on my hat as a mother of 5 and say, how can you raise your family? And so I put on my family budget hat when I'm a critic role. I think it's really, really important. But we have to make sure that as a provincial government, a federal government, and a municipal government, that we're working together, because some families are going to benefit more than some working families are going to. And so we have to make sure that anytime we're looking at these things, we're not disadvantaging anybody. And I recognize that our role is to help those who are disadvantaged, but let's make sure that we don't put them above those people who are working as well. So those are things that I always say, these programs work well, but let's make sure that we put in those calculations to make sure that we're served with that as well.
I have MP Matheson next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. In terms of the poverty reduction, I want to thank you, Councillor Cassidy, for the work that you did, and all the members of the poverty reduction panel. Very important work, because it is indeed that almost overwhelming reality that that we're facing in this country. And I come back to the need for a national reduction strategy. The federal government has to be the leader, and it is the federal government that can, in fact, strengthen the safety net. That is key to empowering families and ending as much of the poverty as is possible. And I realize that the federal government hasn't always been as active as it should be. It's downloaded a great deal of this, first on the provinces and on the municipalities. And the reality is that for every dollar that's collected in taxes, municipalities only receive 8 cents and are asked to do more than their share with that very small part of the tax base. So I come back to the federal role in this, and we're right back to housing, childcare, and income security. And the fact that there are members of our society who simply don't have access to the kind of income that allows them to manage. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm all that convinced in the basic annual income, because I worry that if there is something like that in place, then other services will disappear. Provinces may very well say, well, I don't have to provide support in terms of childcare or housing, because after all, this basic annual income is in place. And I wouldn't like to see that happen, because ultimately, the role of government is to ensure that people who are marginalized are supported. That was the reason that government came into being, to make sure that there weren't extremes in terms of our society. Very, very important that we have that overall vision, and that's why I say national reduction strategy at the federal level. And finally, I need to know what time of day the event on the 13th is, because I know that I'm booked solid through the evening. Thanks.
I have MP Fragaskatos. Just get your microphone on there.
In case there is, in case there are questions about the nature of the Canada Child Benefit, just to clear some things up so we're absolutely on the same page. Yes, it is based on income. That's the only way to deal with poverty. You have to structure the policy based on income. It's tax-free. It's to be given to families with children under the age of 18. And checks will no longer flow to millionaires. That was the case with the Universal Child Care Benefit. This is an entirely different policy, and that's why I continue to believe that it is transformative. It really will lift children across this country and in this city out of poverty. So just to clear a few things up.
Thank you. So we have about 10 minutes left. We have 3 speakers on the list. It'd be great if we could get through those. I have Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful we can get together and inspire each other. We're talking about affordable housing, which I think is great. My preference would be to have people who can afford houses, and that's going to mean more jobs. MP Fragaskatos talked about jobs in his response about poverty, but I thought I'd put the question open to perhaps the other MPs. I know you must have been thinking about what can we do to increase employment in this area, and if you'd let us know some of your ideas, I'd love to hear them.
MP Young.
Thank you very much. Of course, they do go hand in hand, there's no question. And I think I hearken back to a roundtable discussion that we had, and Mayor Brown, you were there, with the tech sector, and how they were commenting on, they really had to struggle to keep the best minds in London. And if we want to increase this sector, and it's obvious that that we can, but we have to find ways to keep the brightest minds in London. And right now they're competing in such a way that that people are leaving London. They're going to the Waterloo because they feel that there's no chance of getting that job here. And so we have to change the mindset and find a way around that. Also, you know, we talked a lot about the manufacturing base and what was happening to that. And then we moved on to the tech, but we can't forget that manufacturing is such an important part of London's economy as well. And I think I'm a part of the Auto Caucus in Ottawa, and we have seen a real resurgence in the auto industry, and we continue to see a resurgence. And I think that in turn will help the auto parts sector. And I think because of that, I would hope that we will see more jobs in that area as well over the coming months and years, because I think that there's certainly, we're not saying that it's over, we're saying that it can still build. We don't want to lose any more than we have, but we have room to grow.
Great, MP Vecchio.
There we go. Okay, so Michael, exactly what you're saying. For me, I believe the number one thing that we can do to eradicate poverty is that of employment. I do recognize that not all can be employed. There are some people whose disabilities do not allow that. And then there are some seniors who have not had the ability to save that much money for retirement, and therefore we need to make sure that we safeguard them as well. But, you know, making sure that we have the small business tax credits and small business lower taxes for them as well, make sure that they can exist. I think I just heard a stat just on my way here when I was listening to AM 980. They were talking about that they were happy that we saw more entrepreneurs sprout up new businesses this summer than ever in the last 7 years. That's great news for all Canadians, because even Frank Stronach started somewhere. He started in somebody's garage, and look where he is today. And I think we also need to make sure that we create those visions and opportunities. Education is also paramount when it comes to that, making sure, especially in the trades, that through the province, that we have enough ability for those who need to get into the trades. I think we're going to lose at least, did they say 100,000 jobs out of the trades in the next 10 to 15 years? We need to make sure that we're replenishing that and giving the opportunities for children to have their education and the ability to have an apprenticeship. One of the most difficult things to find right now is a space to have an apprenticeship. So we need to make sure that we work with our provincial governments, and that is, I think, a really key indicator. I came from the city of St. Thomas, where we lost 6,500 jobs just in manufacturing since 2008. That was a huge decline, lots to do with the automotive sector. We have seen an uprise in that again, and a lot of these companies companies that were doing the tertiary work for those manufacturing companies found other things. But manufacturing cannot be gone because that's what Southwestern Ontario was built on. So I think with the jobs, we need to be there, but also the safeguarding for those people who can't get for themselves. I think we always it has to be two-hand. It's got to be those who can help themselves, give them the opportunities. Those who cannot, then it's our job to help them as well.
MP Fragaskatos.
Thanks very much, Chair. Michael, as far as jobs go, it's absolutely critical. You're right. It is the central way to overcome economic growth problems, more importantly, the problem of poverty that continues to plague our city. There is, I think, around the Horseshoe, I think there's great interest in the work of Richard Florida, who's had a huge impact on municipal policy in Canada and well beyond. He talks about talent, tolerance, and technology. As far as talent, and his ideas are being put into place, and I think there's a great deal there that, in fact, if you read the London plan, it's almost as if, in many cases, you're reading Richard Florida's work. Talent. Let's continue to do everything we can to attract and retain talent, young talent, entrepreneurs, and let's really put in place the sorts of policies that's going to keep those folks here. That includes, I should say, public transit. Let's focus on arts and culture and not only look at the art from because of its intrinsic value, the aesthetic value that it adds to a society, which is important, but also the economic importance, because it can actually help keep people here. That's what especially millennials, are looking for. Tolerance, well, we are a tolerant city anyway, so I would say, as far as London goes, a continued embrace of diversity, I think, is absolutely crucial, because that will help to retain those folks who are coming here and who have chosen to make London their home. And technology. We've said a lot on that, so I don't think I need to continue on that vein, but let's keep supporting this sector. It is absolutely crucial to the growth of this city and the region and the country.
Great, thank you. MP Matheson.
And again, I'll be brief. I'm cognizant of the time. And of course, jobs and jobs creation is key, Michael. One of the things that I think we collectively as a larger community have to look at is access to education. We have to make sure that post-secondary schooling, no matter what it is, whether it's at the university level or training level, it has to be affordable so that those young people can indeed make the contribution that they want to make that will benefit our communities. So I would start there. And of course, transit's been mentioned, because we know that a good system does in fact attract business. They want quality of life for themselves as an entity and for the people who work for them. And livable cities with good transit allows access to jobs, to work, to school. The tech sector, I think it has shown the way, and I'm very proud of the work that Fanshawe has done, not just in innovation, but in regard to the Center for Product Validation. That venture has stimulated business, and I guess, guesswork is gone from the notion of a new product, a new opportunity with that center. One thing too, tax credits for small and medium-sized businesses when they create new jobs and hire young people, because young people aren't going to stay here if those jobs are not available. And we also, I think, have to be cognizant of all of those new Canadians, refugees and immigrants who have come into our community. They need language training, they need upgrades in terms of their professional papers or their skills. And we have to make sure that we're not allowing a new kind of poverty to creep into our communities. So again, working together, there are very practical things that governments can do. I've heard over and over that governments create the conditions for job creation, and we need to create those conditions.
Great, thank you. I'll also add, and it's great to have Councillor Cassidy as well as a clerk near you, the London for All Community Update on the 13th is 4 to 6 at Goodwill Building on Horton. And also we have National Poverty Summit here in London too, which is a national conversation on November 2nd to 4th. So a couple of great opportunities to engage coming up. Now, I said we would end around now, but I budgeted for 5-minute closing statements. So if we roll that back a little bit, we have 2 more questions. I want to see if I can squeeze in at least one of those. I'll go down. Okay, awesome. So Councillor Helmer then. Sorry, I just want to make sure, did everybody who commented on that one, are they good? Okay, great. Oh, we need everybody's microphones.
Okay, so perhaps I had 3 questions, but since I'm only going to have time for 1, I'm just going to do a quick poll on the topic. So immigration, rapid transit phase 2, or taxes and fiscal federalism. Which topic is most interesting to our MPs?
If you want to be that blunt about it, Jesse, no problem. Rapid transit, I think if you were to press me, but geez, I've got to get out of this somehow. So all are important, but rapid transit I think is crucial because it offers so many opportunities. I mean, you mentioned newcomers. Newcomers are looking for ways to get around the city in an effective and affordable way. And I think that...
This is where the chair steps in. We're doing a poll, but now we're discussing. So do you know what question you want to ask? Anybody else want to quickly?
I just want to get a sense very quickly which one people are most interested in, then I'm going to ask the actual question. So the question was not which one of these 3 things is most important.
Okay. Can we talk about rapid transit then? Does everybody agree? Yep, looks like that's your question.
Okay, so phase 1 I think was a great program, and I like that it's an allocation-based approach rather than like a project-based approach. I think it gets us to a system that's fairer and easier for all municipalities to work with. It does have a few drawbacks though. For example, if you don't have a transit system at all, you're not going to get much allocation based on ridership if you don't have a transit system now. So if you want to build a brand new one, it's obviously not going to work. So when we get into phase 2, where the majority of the money is, we're trying to craft on this allocation, very fair per capita kind of approach onto what the existing context is, which is, various provinces have funded transit on a project basis. In the GTA, we have Metrolinx is doing very specific targeted investments in a big way. The federal government has invested in certain projects in the recent past. So trying to graft on this very fair allocation approach onto what has already happened. So for example, Hamilton has $2,000 per capita already from Metrolinx for a transformative transit project. I'm concerned that we make sure that mid-sized cities like London or Halifax, who hasn't had a transformational project yet, that phase 2 funding recognizes that we're all starting from different places. Some people have had transformational projects happen earlier. And I'm wondering from all MPs, sort of how they think we can shape that phase 2 funding so that it's going to work for a city like London, a mid-sized city that's looking to make its first transformational project.
MP Young and then MP Vecchio.
Well, I think, Jesse, you've hit on that is part of our job. Our job is to make sure that the people in Ottawa know how important it is to the citizens of London that we do get the phase 2 funding. And so it is a responsibility, and that's why I'm glad we're doing this, because you need to push us and to make sure that we are making your voices heard. And so I think there's no question that we have that opportunity now. We'll be interested to hear what what the council decides tonight and get that list. But beyond that, make sure Peter and I, and I know Irene and Karen will as well, will make sure that London is heard and that we aren't losing out. And that was one of the major party platforms that we had, was that London will not lose out to Toronto. And we always hear about that Toronto's getting the vast majority of funding. What we believe is that all communities need to get a piece of that pie, and we'll be very strong voices for you in that regard.
MP Vecchio.
So one of the things that I've heard a lot, especially coming from the rural area, is that people have medical appointments in London and they need to be able to get to London. We need to make sure and I think I've spoken to the councillors on this before and the mayor, make sure it's a regional approach. It's not it's just not going to be the city of London that benefits from this. It's going to be all of the areas around it as well. London that's where the university is, that's where the college is, that's where some of the greatest medical tech people are. So we need to make sure we look at it as a regional approach, because it's not just going to benefit the people in London, it's going to benefit those people in a 1-hour radius radius as well. Similar thing that when you look at the Toronto, that's what you hear is, oh, it says Toronto's getting the money, but look at how it affects Oakville with the GO train, and that's the way it needs to be approached as well. So it needs to have that regional approach so that it's got more buy-in from not just the citizens of London, but the citizens of St. Thomas, Elmer, Wardsville, all of those different places as well.
Go ahead.
Point taken, Jesse, on your concerns. I would add, though, that the project itself matters. We at the federal level are intent on encouraging an environmental lens to the application of policy decisions. And when you have projects that would lower greenhouse gas emissions, then that is part of the analysis and adds to very positively to any proposal that is put on the federal radar. Also, an economic lens. If you look at, and this is what I tell constituents when they ask me about rapid transit, it will cut down on congestion. And when you have congestion, it limits economic growth for very obvious reasons that I don't need to get into because of time. Beyond that, though, the way that you've structured, or city planners at least have structured rapid transit in London, it would further contribute and help strengthen existing economic networks in this city. I'm thinking of healthcare in particular, but there are others. And so when you look at it from that perspective as well, as we are at the federal level, we're intent on an environmental lens being applied, and also a lens that says that economic growth is absolutely crucial. When you take those factors into account, I think that might help alleviate some of your concerns.
MP Matheson.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jesse, for the question, the comment, the frame. I know that London has suffered over the years from being not big enough and too big for federal support and money. And I'm hoping that phase 2 addresses that. I think at this point, we should be seeking advice from you in terms of how do we make the case for you and what direction you want to go. My job is to push government, and I would be very happy. In fact, I take a lot of delight in pushing government. But I think it's a two-way discussion. You tell us what the priority is, and then we help you in terms of how do you make your project attractive, and how does it fit into, you know, the ticks of the boxes that are going to advance it. And I think Peter's given you some good advice in regard to how is it environmentally responsible? How does it enhance economic growth? So let's talk. Let's have this back and forth dialogue.
I have Mayor Brown.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch very briefly on a point that MP Vecchio made, and that is that this really is a regional project, and it's how we all see it. To give you a couple of examples of the 2.5 million people that live in southwestern Ontario, about 1.3 million of those live in the 11 largest urban centers, and we formed a group of mayors called MOSO. It's the Mayors of Southwestern Ontario. Our rapid transit program has their endorsement for the exact reason that MP Vecchio outlined, that this isn't just a program that will move London forward, it will move all of southwestern Ontario forward. And so I think that that's very key. From the transportation perspective, from the infrastructure investment perspective, that $500 million will employ a lot of people, and not just people living in this community. And so it really is, I think, a game changer for all of southwestern Ontario, particularly when we link it into those inter-community transportation strategies and potentially high-speed rail between here and Kitchener-Waterloo and Toronto. So I want to thank you for making that point.
Great, thank you. So I have one person left on the list. I'm going to cut it off here. I'm actually cutting myself off. But since I'm the chair, I will make a comment before we move into the wrap-ups of the MPs. My question is probably in my comment somewhere, and that is, a number of times today it's been mentioned that, you know, let's sit down for coffee. Let's tell me how to push government. Consultations on the poverty pre-budget submission and being involved with council in that. So obviously we absolutely want to be involved. in as many ways as we possibly can. And sometimes we need support from our MPs to tell us what is the most effective way of being involved, whether that's working through having, asking you to tell stories about London in your caucus meetings, whether it's pre-budget consultations, whether it's those casual conversations. I think, us knowing more from you about how we can communicate that message effectively to government and opposition, I think is something that we would love to hear from. You can comment about that in your closing comments, but if you already have pre-prepared ones, that's fine. But I think that that's really important to us. And obviously, we are 100% committed to all of those opportunities of engagement in any way that we can, because I think all of them are necessary components. So I will start with the wrap-ups, and we have about 10 minutes for that. I know a couple of colleagues have to get out of here right away, so what we'll do is we'll go with the order on the agenda, and so we'll start with MP Kate Young.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Morgan. I really do appreciate this opportunity, and I agree that this is just the start. I think we should have, I know the idea was to have, I think, this type of meeting every year at least, if not every couple of months. And I think that's a really great idea, and I'd be all for that. I wanted to harken back to something that Councillor Usher said in one of his opening statements about build a better city, you build a better nation. And I think that is, quite honestly, that is why we're all here. We're all here for the same reasons. We want to build a better city, and that in turn will build a better Canada. I also wanted to talk about the sustainability of infrastructure, and I don't want us to drop the ball on that area. I think it's so important to make sure that whatever we're doing, whatever projects that we're looking at, what you're looking at as a city, that it is sustainable, because we have to look towards the next generations and make sure that our children's children don't have to be sitting around a table like this and saying, why haven't we been able to get it right? We want to get it right, and so that's why I think we all need to continue this discussion. The other thing that wasn't mentioned, and I didn't want it to go unsaid, is how important clean water investment is, and the wastewater announcements, and I want to just highlight that's something that we'll be making sure. I know if you don't have the clean water strategy, then everything else that we've talked about is mute. So that's important. And the one area about poverty reduction that I wanted to mention is, how do we make sure that the people who are of low incomes are filling out their income tax forms so that they're able to get the opportunities that are afforded to them? And I want to make sure that when we're talking about poverty reduction, that we talk about that as well, and that we increase the number of people who are actually getting the benefits that they deserve. I know that's a bit all over the place, but I wanted to make sure that I was able to get those messages out. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you. I'll move to Member of Parliament Peter Fragascatos.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to thank all of you for the work that you do. At the outset, we exchanged that, but I don't think a lot of Londoners realize that you guys have two jobs in so many cases. You hold this job, which is a full-time job, and if you were to only hold this position, then you would still have a great deal of work, and it would be overwhelming at times. But many of you are doing this job and something else. And the commitment that you've shown to this city since you've been elected is really nothing short of remarkable. You're helping to change the perception of London. Maybe it doesn't feel like that all the time, but let me assure you that you are. Part of the challenge, I suppose, that I recognized when I was first elected is that there is an existing understanding of London, or perception, I should say, and that is that we're a Rust Belt city that's, down and out. Well, we have been working at the federal level to change that perception, but it really helps when we have folks who are here, committed on a local level, and who are working every day to change that conversation and that image of London. So we take those stories, all of that has been happening since 2014, since so many of you were elected. And I know, Councillor Usher, you've been here for longer than that, but you certainly fit into this category, as well as folks who are working tirelessly to advance a dialogue that is really helping to transform what London is all about in the public mind at the national level. So, Chair, you mentioned caucus, raising stories about London. Love talking about tech in caucus. Kate has brought up examples of what London is doing around refugees and helping to settle newcomers in new and dynamic ways that really is putting us on the map. That story is really telling something, telling the country, in fact, because we are talking to representatives who represent folks from across the country, and it's giving us an idea of London that really doesn't line up with the existing stereotype. We're breaking out of that mold, and it's absolutely critical. I've made it a point to reach out to Minister Sohi, really from the beginning, and we chat every week and a half or so about infrastructure issues, and I'm updating him on a constant basis when it comes to SHIFT. That's continuing, and what he's been great to work with. And what he sees is a city that is really intent on remaking itself. And transit is central to that story. And so I want you to continue to be advocates and passionate about transit and all the other issues, because really I can assure you that it is having an impact at the federal level. It is being recognized. So thank you again for the opportunity. Really appreciate it, and whether it's coffee or whatever it might be, I want a dialogue. If you think that, this issue, whatever issue it might be, XYZ issue that needs to be given attention at the federal level, then pick up the phone and call my office. My door is open, the phone is on, and let's have that dialogue.
Thank you. MP Irene Matheson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to everyone here today for a very good and frank, energetic discussion. I appreciate it very much. We have some huge issues in this country. Climate change, electoral reform, the future of healthcare funding, social programs, our relationships with First Nations and with New Canadians. All of those are significant, but they percolate down to the municipality, and you as a government have to deal with them on a very real face-to-face basis. So I want the discussion to continue. I understand that there have been a great many responsibilities and fiscal responsibilities downloaded to municipalities, and I think that we do have to start there. I'd like to talk more on a one-to-one basis with you, or 2 or 3 come to my office. Sean is here, and just give Sean a call, because I want to hear more about those 25 initiatives connected to rapid transit, and the ideas in regard to jobs and infrastructure, because they go together. As we build infrastructure, we create jobs, and the infrastructure attracts jobs, so very important. And I'd also like you to help connect my office to those entrepreneurs, those people who are coming to the city, not just in the tech sector, but in all sectors, those small and medium businesses that can help provide me with the information I need, the education I need, and also permit me to help in any way that I can in terms of direction or just this exchange of ideas. So please know that I'm very open and very interested in doing what I can for London.
MP Karen Vecchio.
And like everybody else has said, thank you very much for having us today. It's so important that we do have this dialogue and these conversations, and the 4 of us appear before you, because we need to work together, and I think that's what we see here. Peter and Kate are, yes, they're of course in government, but both Irene and I have roles to play, her being the critics for veterans and myself for children's families, children and social development. And it's really important that we do make sure that we're connecting with all of us, because although my role may not be sitting in the government caucus, my role is I can pick up the phone and speak to the minister at any time. So we need to make sure that's there as well, because we do need to work together. As I illustrated before, I've seen Kate in her role as parliamentary secretary, and that's what she does, and I do applaud her for that, and my caucus all knows that I applaud her for that. So, as for world-class events, I mean, I was here when you had the figure skating championships, and London is an incredible city, and we do have the airport, we have the train, we have everything viable here to get people around, other than needing that rapid transit to come with the shift. But it is a great place to have these events. So I know myself, and I'm sure the three beside me would all agree, and anytime that you can host something, that this is a great city to do so. Just a reminder, because I am Elgin, Middlesex, London, so sometimes I'm not seen as a London MP, but I do represent many people in London. So I know that there was a discussion when it came, and Anna's one of, yes, so I do represent Ward 14, 12, and 9. And so sometimes I will be left off an invitation list. So I'm just going to remind you, get Vecchio at the table. Sometimes I do have some good things to offer, but I think it's really important. And when it comes to the income tax, I'm just going to go on with what Kate had said. That is one thing I found. So for 11 years, I did work in Joe Preston's office. So I was the frontline worker, seeing what some of the concerns were. So when sitting in there talking about poverty, old age security, guaranteed income supplement, I would have filled out over 1,000 GIS applications in my time, and did usually about 200 to 300 tax returns per year. So it's really important that we work together, and that as a community for the City of London, I know in St. Thomas, we run our own tax return clinic, and it comes from my office. And I know Irene does a lot of that as well. But we need to make sure that our families get those benefits. So if the City of London, if there's a way that we can promote that as well, I think it's really important that sometimes using my advertising dollars to promote something that's local, we can do that. But making sure that our people get the tax benefits that they need, because child tax benefit, that was one of the greatest concerns, is that we had so many people not doing their taxes, so they didn't get the CCB. And that was the same with the child tax benefit as well. Both worked on your annual incomes. So making sure that all of our people are aware. And I think the most important thing is recognizing that we are 3 levels of a government that can work together. So I always say to my staff, and I know it's done here as well, don't ever turn the person away, give them better direction. And I think that we can all do that together, whether it's as members of parliament, members of provincial parliament, or councillors on city council. So we're all here to work for the people, and I think we have a great partnership at all 3 levels right now going. Thank you.
Great. Well, let me just say thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your passion for our community, and we certainly consider everyone here colleagues, and I know we'll be working a lot closer together. With that in mind, I'm sure our staff will be in touch to talk about setting up the next opportunity for us to engage in this format, but as we discussed, we'll be engaging with you in a number of different methods. I have just a couple of procedural things. We're actually in the middle of a meeting, so I'm just going to wrap that up. I know a few people have to get away, but I know we'd like to do a photo, and our friends in the media would also, I'm sure, like to engage with the representatives. So you don't have to move. I'm sure we'll be very quick. I'm looking at my colleagues on the committee to wrap up this meeting. I believe we have a motion on the screen to receive the presentations. I would look for a mover and seconder. Councillor Park has moved. Councillor Hummer second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll open that for voting. Councillor Usher is going to vote manually yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
We have no items for direction. We have no deferred matters or additional business because this is a special meeting. I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Usher, seconded by Mayor Brown. All those in favor? That carries. We're adjourned.